So good morning, everyone. Welcome to the ninth ECAAR Dialogue webinar on the topic Ethics as a Growing Capability in ASEAN. And warm welcome to our participants in Zoom webinar and also those join us live on the AUN Secretariat YouTube channel. My name is Sarita from the ASEAN University Network or AUN Secretariat, and I'm happy to be your MC today. Before we begin, please note that this webinar is being recorded. Kindly ensure that your microphones are muted and your videos are turned off. Today's webinar marks the introduction of the Ethics of ASEAN, a significant publication resulting from 2-year collaboration between AUN and Dr. Bob Aubrey, founder of ASEAN Human Development Organization, or ADO. The book explores the growing importance of ethics in ASEAN, covering key areas like human development, leadership, governance, business, human rights, and sustainability. Between 2021-2023, the Ethics Council and Advisory of ASEAN Region, or ECAAR, ADO, and the Foundation of International Human Rights Reporting Standards, or FIRST, and AUN successfully conducted 8 ECAAR dialogues with 44 speakers. We reached over 8,000 participants and many more through the recorded session. As ethics play a key role in Southeast Asia development, today's webinar is co-organized by ECAAR, ADO FIRST, and AUN once again. We will continue this important conversation focusing on governance, healthcare, business ethics, and ASEAN's ethic future. Our distinguished speaker will present for approximately 15 to 20 minutes each, followed by Q&A session. So our participant, please feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A box below, also on YouTube live channel as well. And please also help us addressing the speaker names in the question, so our team will compile them for the speaker to answer at the end. And this session, as you can see the rundown on the screen, this session will be moderated by our Associate Professor Dr. Thanapan Raipragopsap, Deputy Executive Director of AUN. So without further ado, please join me in welcome our moderator for today. Dr. Thanapan, please.
Thank you very much, Ms. Saluta. Well, good morning. Our panelists, our staff, our AUN Secretariat, our audience, everywhere, I would guess, everywhere in the world, to join our esteemed ECAAR dialogue on the topic of ethics as a growing capability in ASEAN. Let me introduce myself once again. My name is Thanapan Raipragopsap, the Deputy Executive Director of the ASEAN University Network, or AUN Secretariat. This ECAAR dialogue brings together 4 esteemed panelists joining us today. Let me briefly introduce 4 of our esteemed panelists or speakers. First, Dr. Bob Aubrey, the founder and chair of the ADO and the author of the Ethics of ASEAN with partnership with the AUN. Second, Dr. Masugi Darusman, the co-founder and chairperson of the FIHRSST. Third, Associate Professor Dr. Orapin Lauseed, Deputy Director for Administration and Academic Service, ASEAN Institute for Health Development. And fourth, Mr. Gil Gonzalez, Senior Advisor for the ASEAN Business Advisory Councils, or ASEAN's BAC, Philippine chapter. And here they are.
Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Thanapan, for your kind introduction. So before we start the session, we would like to invite all the speakers to have group photo together with Dr. Thanapan. So our speaker, please turn on your camera so we can see each other. Okay, all right. So let me count on 1, 2, 3. Another photo. All right, smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You.
Okay, all right. So let me hand over back to Dr. Thanapan.
โอเคครับ thank you very much ครับคุณสรุตา for your kind introduction and the group photo administration. All right. Well, before we go, I would like to once again make an announcement. If the audience have any question, feel free to type your question in the chat box of this Zoom. And please indicate who would you like to talk to, so it will be easier for us to make an arrangement and identify to our panelists for the questions. All right. We will proceed to our first panelist, Dr. Bob Aubrey, for your presentation. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Thanapan, and good to see you again. And for everyone here, I'd like to say how impressed I am by the number of people that have shown an interest, again, from many countries, in ethics. And this was something that I think is what is behind the book. So the first thing, I'm going to go through this in about 20 minutes to tell you about the book, and set up the reasons for why we are I'm having a problem with my camera. Let me see if it turns back on. Well, we'll see. There we go. And okay, so let me just go through. I won't worry about the camera. So this is the reason we're talking about this book is it's the first one. And this is something that through the dialogues, we were curious about, and something that I had asked about is there any book about ethics in ASEAN? If you look, and I know that many of you here are students or academics, and some of you may be teaching or following ethics courses, and once you get those ethics books, you find that very much of it is written by Westerners and sort of assumes that the West is the creator of ethics, or the West is more advanced in ethics, or that the concepts come from ethics. And that's obviously not true. China has a whole ethical tradition starting from Confucius as well. But in Southeast Asia, we really don't find many publications on ethics. So part of that is the reason we wanted to do the dialogues was to say, well, what is the ethics of this very diverse and growing in importance a region that is becoming a community? And are we able to manage ethics or take ethical decisions? So let me go to the second slide, please. Okay. So as I mentioned, this is the first book on ethics, and it's something that was a collaborative effort over several years. And we can go to the next slide. I think I already talked about that. Let me tell you a little bit in the next slide on where the book comes from. So the story behind it is at ASEAN Human Development Organization, we really wanted to have an ethics council or an ethics committee, because in human development, particularly in work, which is changing a great deal, practitioners come every day with ethical questions about bias in hiring, who do you promote, what is the right kind of leader, and these are all ethical questions. So the idea was that if there were a problem, and particularly in the world of work, in some countries you have laws that labor laws that are very different from the other country and sometimes even contradictory. So we thought that we would give some reference or guidance to the practitioners who would come up with questions. I spoke about this with Dr. Marzuki Darusman, and he immediately said that this is something that's not needed not just for AHDO, but is something for the region, and that this should be a platform for dialogue about the ethical questions of the region. Immediately after that, I contacted Dr. Choltis at the ASEAN University Network, because I wanted to know if ethics is something that is taught in the universities. Are the number of ethics courses very high or very low? Are they growing or not? And found out, to my surprise, that there are quite a lot of ethics courses in many of the different departments, and that it is becoming more important. So again, the idea that we need to really talk about the specific ethical issues of the region became something that was not conceived initially as a book, but it was something that we could see was needed. And this partnership with the three of us is what started these ADO dialogues, or the ECAAR dialogues. But it wouldn't have happened without the people, those pictures that you see on the right of this slide, which is the ASEAN University Network team, which is not only good, excellent, I would say, at organizing webinars, but also has done a great deal of job on the research from the book. I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. So thank you very much to all of you. So it is a collaborative effort. It's a rich collaboration, and that's what was needed to be able to put this into the form of a book. About the time we got to the fifth ECAAR webinar, I mentioned that we had enough material for a book, and that it was quite new because it was specifically focused on ASEAN, and we had all these experts coming in as panelists. So the idea of starting the book came from that. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, thank you. So in ASEAN, when I'm talking about ASEAN, there's two things that we need to understand, which is Southeast Asia as a geographical region, which is 11 countries, including Timor-Leste, and the 10 countries of the ASEAN Charter, and who make up this political, economic, and social-cultural community. What I've put here in this slide are some of the ethical issues that you find in the different pillars, right? So let's start with the left on the in the yellow. You can see that most of the countries have come out of independence, and merdeka, freedom, is one of the ethical values of this region. Peace and non-alignment also is an ethical stance, ethical position formally declared for the region that you don't find in other regions. Collaboration is one of the common cultural areas that make Southeast Asia very strong. People are very good in relationships. You can even test this on some of the emotional intelligence questionnaires, and you find that people are very good at relationships and working together. And then non-interference is one of the pillars of the ethical structure of ASEAN. And I'll come back to that when it comes to some of the challenges. Let me turn to the blue column. The economic community, well, development has been there since the very beginning, even before the 1967 foundation of ASEAN. These countries wanted to develop. And now we're starting to see that ASEAN is a high growth region. It's taking more and more of a spotlight in the as a leader, as a regional leader, and therefore this world-class competitivity that we're seeing as fueling economic growth is very important. Innovation and entrepreneurship is very important in the business side, and work mobility is one of the ethical questions that we have as we go through the work policies. Can people move around to the different countries? And this can be compared to another region, which is the European Union, which has its own ethical structures and is organized in a different way. Finally, in the green side, the ASEAN social cultural community is where you find most of the ethics. Actually, the human rights bodies are on the right side, on the left side, sorry, in the political security. But ASEAN identity, human development, diversity and inclusion, sustainability, health also, I believe, and these are all in the social cultural community. So my point is that the ASEAN as a structure and the ASEAN Secretariat and the agencies and the bodies and the CSOs, like the one I founded, all have a stake in the dialogue on ethics, and this is constructed and it has an evolution. It is changing and evolving. Let's go to the next slide, please. So one of the things that came out of the work on the book was what kind of ethics do we have? And rather than going into a lot of history about who created what ethical philosophy, which would be a very big textbook, the idea was to keep it simple, accessible as a sort of reference book or source book that you would have in classes, not only for academic courses, but also more and more we're seeing that ethics is part of business. Many of the professions have their own ethical systems. So to go through this, these 5 are questions of where do they come from. Virtue ethics really answers the question, how should I live my life? What's the right thing to do? And each country in ASEAN has its own virtue ethics. It's actually embedded, obviously, in the religions. It's embedded in the cultural practices, but it's also embedded in the nationalism of each country, which is different. So virtue ethics is something that answers the question, what should we do? And this is what we really believe. Next is rules-based ethics, which is the idea that we must come together and agree to a system that is codified, sometimes tacitly, sometimes explicitly into laws or policies, but we need to have common rules. Results-based ethics is what actually works. If we may have an ethical theory, but it may not work. It may not have the results that we want. Ethical leadership ethics are when leaders come and actually change or shape the ethics and put it in a different direction. And then finally, emerging ethical issues are issues that we can see are coming that we didn't have to deal with before. And there are more and more of them, I would say, as society goes through changes. Let's go to the next slide. So just to give you a quick example of each, virtue ethics, here you see the picture of the ASEAN countries. And because ASEAN is highly diverse, it is difficult to agree on some ethical stances, and particularly when a problem comes up. But nevertheless, we can see that virtue ethics is a force that has allowed ASEAN to make a certain number of positions, as we saw for peace and security, but can also be an obstacle. The next one. Let's go to the example of the beyond the virtue ethics. Rules-based ethics this is the picture is the United Nations. You can remember the 1948 Declaration of Human Rights. But United Nations is a body, planetary body that tries to solve with rules-based ethics what we should be doing, and new issues come up all the time. So this is an example of rules-based. The next one, an example. This is a picture of people standing in line during the COVID pandemic, and what we saw was that this is not rules-based. I'm sorry, the word should be results-based. So we had to really figure out what was working in the COVID pandemic. Should we wear a mask? Should we take the vaccinations? Should we allow travel? Should we keep people at home? Should we be working from home? All of those issues came up again, and they come up very, very quickly as the different countries and as the region started to, and the world itself, started to create an ethic of what we should be doing during COVID. What is the right thing to do? What's not the right thing to do? Let's go to the next one. This is also called rules-based ethics, but it should be emerging ethics. And these are emerging issues. On the left, you see the picture of the smokestack, which is representative of global warming. In the middle, you see the polar bear because of the warming of the planet. Their habitat is changing radically. And on the right, you see neurosciences, AI, which is also raising quite a number of ethical questions. So the emerging ethical issues will be coming at us always, and we will always have to be able to dialogue on what is the right ethical stance to take in front of this issue. Sustainability is a very good example of an issue that's very difficult for ASEAN to handle. Let's go to the next one. Leadership ethics. There are many leaders. We have leaders of state, obviously, but these leaders are particularly identified because they have won. These are the three people in ASEAN who have won the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, I should say on the right, José Ramos Horta, president of Timor-Leste. Timor-Leste is an observer status. It's not yet voted to become a full member of ASEAN. Hopefully that will come soon. But he won the Nobel Prize on the struggle for independence of Timor-Leste. In the middle, the Filipina Maria Ressa is recognized for her work in journalism and the freedom of the press. And on the left, you all recognize Aung San Suu Kyi, who is now in prison after the overthrow of the government in 2021. Let's go to the next one. So these people have determined, and they are recognized as making ethical advances and leading the region in terms of ethics. And nevertheless, we have ethical challenges. Here, the picture represents what happens on the streets in Myanmar with the takeover of the military after a free and fair, or after a free election in which the overwhelming majority put another government in place. ASEAN was challenged in this because the question is, well, what do we do? Because we have, and this is where it becomes difficult to decide, is we have, on one hand, we shouldn't intervene in the internal affairs of a country. On the other hand, this is obviously in violation of all the ethics, the rules-based ethics, the results-based ethics, all of the human development ethics, and the 5 points that were created have still not been implemented. So that's an example of a challenge. Let's go to the next one. So this is my last slide, and I'm going to conclude with that, is that what is the future of ethics? It has evolved. On the right, that little picture you see in the upper right shows that the 1967 declaration of ASEAN by the 5 countries has had a history. And the question is, well, as we go forward, what's going to actually happen? So let's look at first at a failure scenario. I had to start thinking about this writing the book, because not everything is, it's not obvious that everything's going to be successful. So if ASEAN loses its freedom and human rights, this would be an ethical failure. It's what started in ASEAN. It's something that can be debated. It's something that's somewhat different from one country to the other. But the basic idea that there would be no freedom or human rights in the ASEAN region would be an ethical failure. The next one would be human development, which is one in which particularly the question of inequality, in which there would be an increasing separation between the rich at the top and nothing for ordinary people, and therefore the human development story, the success story of ASEAN would come to an end, would be a failure. And finally, the sustainability in which, as I said, on the one hand, we do want to have industrial development, And obviously, in the region, we have an increasing need for energy. But on the other hand, we can see that very economic development is creating impacts in sustainability that we don't want to have. So that would be an example of the failure scenario. Let's look at the success scenario. I think that as I observe, ASEAN, and I'm someone who's come from the outside, so I haven't lived in ASEAN all my life. I've been here for 17 years, but here we can see that the rules-based and results-based ethics have become more important, and they should increasingly become important as we see, for example, in the results-based. Let's take an example of sustainability. What is the actual result of the increase in carbon, or what's the result of the decrease in biological species in the region? We should be looking at the results. And then the rules base would be, obviously, what do we actually agree with the declarations and the roadmaps that we have set for ourselves in ASEAN? Dealing effectively with the emerging ethical challenges, I already mentioned the one in Myanmar. There are others, obviously, and these are coming up again and again. AI is one of the very hot topics, for example, and we will have 3 examples of the ethical capability from our speakers. And then finally, developing the next generation of ASEAN ethical leaders, I think, is the key to determining whether ASEAN is going to be a success scenario or a failure scenario, is how is the next generation going to be able to maintain and to take its place as leaders of ASEAN in an ethical way. So that is what basically you can find in the book. And once again, I'm very happy to have been able to work on this book with the ASEAN University Network and with all the experts and speakers. And I would like to now hand this back to our moderator, Dr. Tanapan.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Bob, for your presentation. So now we can see the the origins of the ethic of the ASEAN, and also the scenario that Dr. Bob provide us. Very interesting. Well, I think we will have time to talk about it in the next round. All right, let's go to our next panelist, Dr. Masuki.
Thank you, Dr. Tanapan. Am I getting through the?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me and the organizers. A very efficient and excellent work in organizing this as a continuation of our previous one. I think let's start with what Dr. Bob has laid out earlier. It's very, very useful to discuss this against that background. I've been asked to talk about ethics in ASEAN and what is known as the rules-based order. Now, these are 2 terminologies that need perhaps a bit of a clarification. If we can get to the second slide, please, terminology. Simply, and this refers to the understanding or the definition that is in the book regarding ethics. Actions considered to be right or good taken collectively by ASEAN states. Deliberately, I'm highlighting ASEAN states here. And these actions are based on pre-stated purposes and principles. Yeah. Now, could we go to terminology 2? That's the next slide. Now, just to clarify on the rules-based order. Now, if we go back to 2007, this is just a quick, brief political timeline. when the 70th ASEAN Summit adopted the ASEAN Charter, the Charter institutionalized all the main concepts or ideas that's being discussed this morning: human rights, international law, good governance, rules-based regime. Now, it's interesting that both international law and a rules-based order is adopted by ASEAN. I'm not sure how the debate and thinking was at that time, but a rules-based order is a rules or a norms-based approach to international law, as opposed to a doctrine-oriented approach. Now, this is a interesting angle because if you can go to the third slide, please. Could go to the third. Yeah. Now, international law is in terms of doctrine is based on the idea of absolute sovereignty and non-interference. This was a point that was brought up by Dr. Bob earlier. Whereas a rules-based order goes out from a notion of a non-exclusive sovereignty. Sovereignty is relative; it's not absolute. And the notion of intervention comes out here, as opposed to non-interference. Now, I'm not sure if this is what ASEAN had in mind, but this is what is understood as a rules-based order, which is not quite the international law, the standard international law as we know it. But a rules-based order is a mechanism or an arrangement that is based on the needs and the context of the requirement of having an orderly arrangement and relations between states. Now, we know that the context that we are looking at makes this distinction, and this is going back to the relevant feature to the next slide, please, the section 1. What we have now is one region, which is Southeast Asia as a region, but we do have ASEAN, which is a regional construct. Whereas Southeast Asia, as Bob was mentioning, is a geohistorical area with an autonomous history rather than a statist history. Now, it would seem that ASEAN could be seen as the tip of the iceberg, whereas Southeast Asia is the bulk of the iceberg, which is below the surface, and which is, in fact, the context where ethical processes or ethical experience is embedded. Now, if we go to the second, the next slide, distinction 2. The difference between these two histories, we are so used to the statist history where religion, dynasty, and imperial relations with outside forces has been the main historiography, whereas in recent times, further research has shown that the real Southeast Asia is people-centered. It's cosmopolitan, it is mobile, it is dynamic locally, it's migratory, and therefore, going back to this notion that we have one region and two history brings up the problematic as to how let's say effective is ethical concepts that come out from ASEAN decisions compared to, or in relation to the daily way of the Southeast Asian peoples relating to each other, where we have such diverse situations where people coming from diverse backgrounds, religion, and ethnic groups, alongside the ethics that goes out from ASEAN decisions on what is happening within ASEAN. Yeah? Now, just to jump forward to challenges that we face at the moment. There is a sense, that the overall global situation is colored, and shaped by a trend towards a general autocratization of leadership and politics. We will have Mr. Trump next year as the President of the United States, and we know from experience how that leadership is going to be implemented. Mr. Trump is a fan of great power and balance of power notions, which is commensurate or consistent with a view of a rules-based order, according to the version that he has, and that will, of course, impact on how we look at the situation and conditions globally. Also, a sample of political options lying ahead could also be where the global order could be then underpinned by the rise of corporations in global affairs. Much more so from the past, where it used to be just the corporate order, but under the circumstances today, that will be backed by much more forcefully by the military. And another possible scenario is what we call neo-vanguardism, where there will be initiatives or actions taken by people that base themselves on beliefs and religious concepts in order to change the world. Now, the last slide is the future for ASEAN ethics. Now, what I'm trying to bring out is this situation. Yes, we do have ASEAN. Yes, we do have all the ethical decisions that come out from ASEAN states. But how much is that reflective of what the people believe? It would seem that ASEAN could be seen as restraining, as a restraining factor on what is going on within the people, and it could be seen as a straitjacket that hampers political development, and democracy across the region, and therefore there's a sense that over the past years since the ASEAN was established, there has been a deep politicizing process, you know, and this has prevented the ASEAN people from expressing themselves politically and openly and freely their aspirations, and therefore there's a need to repoliticize ASEAN through the political parties, through less restrictive systems, and to allow politics to emerge and people to be able to freely express their views and feelings across the region. The recent crisis in Thailand and currently in Myanmar show that there is this aspiration of the younger generation to break free of this political straitjacket, and therefore, how do we allow ASEAN ethics to proceed? We may need to create a demand for ethics. And this is where I think we should try to perhaps look at the concept of civil society, where freedom and political space can flourish, and therefore allow ethics and politics to jointly move the life in our region on the basis of ethics, but also on the basis of freedom. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Masuki, for your insightful comments, presentations. I can see, I think one interesting point that Dr. Masuki has is, well, I think the ethics of the ASEAN, well, we need to consider historical and political context, and also, well, since we are part of the global politics and economy, so we need to, well, I would say, consider the global environment, global politics, well, which Dr. Masuki has already mentioned. Okay, well, we hope that we can come back with another round, or in case the audience has questions for Dr. Masuki. Before we go to Dr. Oropin, I think I see a couple of participants raised a hand. Well, since the time limitation, so well, will you please type the questions and please identify the panelists who would you like to have the conversation, would like to answer the would you like to answer your questions. All right, I'll hand over to Dr. Oropin. Please, Dr. Oropin. Okay, your slides.
Yeah, can you see my slide?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
thank you very much. I'm going to share my full screen. So thank you for your invitation. My name is Sarah Pin. I'm working at Asian Institute for Health Development at Mahidol University. So I'm glad to share you some of my point of view related to ethics in healthcare. Okay, before we start, may I use this opportunity to introduce our institute? Yes, we work under Mahidol University. Some might not familiar with our institute. So under Mahidol University, we have mandate for education, generate the new knowledge for research, and provide academic service in capacity building in health workforce around the world as well. We commit to be a global health policy, and health development in ASEAN region by 2027. And Mahidol University assigned us to be the Secretary Office of ASEAN University Network on Health Promotion, which name is AUNHPN, as well as the Mahidol Global Health as well. In terms of academics, we have two graduated program, PhD in Health and Sustainable Development and Master of Primary Healthcare Management. Two of them are international. We provide full and partial supported as well. You may share this information for your network as well. We also deliver online and on-site mode. So our website is www.aihd.mahidol.ac.th. So right now we have more than 700 students around the world as part of our alumni Master of Primary Healthcare and Management. So let's start with the ethics principle in healthcare and as well as the artificial intelligence, which is one of the key things that's happening in this era. And I will share some of the example of AI based on healthcare application, followed by benefits of AI can bring in the medical fields. And finally, I will address some of the AI ethical challenge. As you may know that the implementation of technologies in healthcare practice is increasing and become progressively diverse. When new technologies introduce health professional long-standing relationship-based and traditional culture of care ethics may be affected, transform and change, challenge, lead to new ethical dilemmas. Ethics care was developed as an alternative to moral principle and moral reasoning. In a recent review of healthcare professional use, care ethics in practice recognize that care is a universal human experience. Care ethics is founded and relationship based on presence, trust, and respect through the person at the center of cares. There are 10 possible guidelines that has been generated for health promotion, public health, and health professional that I may share these 10 guidelines for you. Do good, maybe a little bit generous, identify the effectiveness, quality, utility as well. Do no harms, include non-maleficent, safety, quality, is referred to action and mitigate any potential harms, should be identified as feasible. Equity, or we can say that it's like justice, fairness, solidarity. Equity may involve pursuing equity in health outcomes through equally applied action. For example, targeting of the intervention towards disadvantaged group. So this is part of done. In terms of respect, it could include the respect for individual, family, other group, or even the community or population. It also covers protection and promotion of self-respect, self-esteem among individual, group, community as part of promoting a sense of well-being and protecting against unhealthy influence and behaviors. In terms of empowerment, about helping individual, family, other groups, community, and population to have more control of their health. So the next one is we might familiar with sustainability. This issue are raising the concern, making sure that health improvement action are sustained for as long as it need to be. Participation that include engagement, empowerment, ownership, which people should be involved in identifying their health needs and think about the solution action for better of their health. Openness is referred to transparency, engagement, mutualities, consent using the decision-making triangle is value, which is I'm going to talk in next slide, in facilitating continuous constructive dialogue after decisions have been made. And accountability. For example, the governance effectiveness in this should be accountable for action and outcome operating in accordance with ethical principles. So this is the triangle, the decision-making triangle, draw ethics evidence that I have mentioned 10 issues as earlier. The available evidence is used to inform judgments as the extent in which the ethical principles should be satisfied, and theoretical considerations are taken into account alongside evidence and where there are gaps in the available evidence. Theoretical framework can serve as a tool for navigating those new landscapes in technology related to healthcare as well. The triangle would be used as formulating action recommendation in guidance developing process, which systematically gather and synthesis evidence on effectiveness would be viewed through an appropriate set of theoretical principles. So next one, I'm going to discuss about the artificial appropriate in healthcare and give you some example of those which has been used. The recently AI or artificial intelligence has been one of the hottest topic in the technology in the world. AI can be used to diagnosis, drug development, treatment personalization, gene editing, disease prediction, and many and more. It helps to improve healthcare services by benefiting medical professionals, hospital, and the patients as well. How use AI healthcare? It has been applied in clinical practice to risk assessment model, improving diagnosis, accuracy, workflow efficiency. AI are capable to identify the relationship in raw data and is applied to most of medical fields, including those 5 areas. The healthcare sector trying to improve the quality of care, including develop better drug, monitoring patients' conditions through AI, and implementing AI as a model for clinical trial. So the AI, I am going to give you some example of AI in healthcare. Firstly, we use as a predict of the medical need. The technique are used as through the data in the hospitals, health center, and pharmacies to track the need of medicines, medical staff, devices, and equipment in various hospitals and health centers. Automatic radiation analysis, the radiologist, as we know, that is considered as one of the most expensive doctor in the hospitals. AI is particular with the largest application of using radiologists is used as the image recognitions, which has been important development in terms of the amount of data collected as well as the important computerized power as well. AI in ophthalmology, AI in machine learning are utilized in detecting diabetes retinopathies. When you have diabetes, you are more, if you are uncontrolled, you are more likely to have diabetic retinopathies. The disease affects number of diabetic patients. It touches on tiny blood vessels which supply the retina and may cause hemorrhage or retinal detachment, which may cause even blindness. The next one is about the robotic surgeries, which you might all know about one of the modern technologies in medicines and remote surgeries, which the surgeon can be performed remote operation using the medical robot or robotic arm. This digital transformation will reduce some of the causes, recovery rapidly, and save life in the thousands of people in the futures, especially those who live very far from the cities. Drug discovery, in terms of these issues, the AI technique can be implicated in 4 stages of drug development, which we have known that is about the preclinical, clinical stage, or even final post-marketing. AI was successfully applied in discovering the molecular target and determining the central component of drug. Increasing access to healthcare. AI is contributing in increasing the access to healthcare through different ways. In recent years, especially during COVID-19 pandemic, the teletech or medicine has been innovated using AI. This smart digitalization improved the quality and rapidness of diverse services. The telediagnosis was developed based on the interaction of computer to humans. So this is the last two AI-based, as I give you the examples. For example, smart monitoring devices, computers can be used in healthcare sectors as well, and it will reduce the cost of continuum review and increase the effectiveness and quality of health services. The smart camera can use a video analysis and can be in the hospital or even in patient at home. The last one is about the better patient journeys. Patient journey is a list of electronic health record that contain a patient's personal data, the visit to hospital, the admission information, and provide medical over the period of time. It helps medical professional to make a decision making. Machine learning was used to predict the patient state on patient journeys, such as admission or imaging diagnosis. This prediction may play as an important role in healthcare system. Okay. The next one I'm going to cover about the benefit of AI, which can be medical record. AI-enabled tools can extract relevant information from huge amount of data and generate actionable insight, which may be applied in many applications. Furthermore, by using the AI technology, the physician could find the information in unstructured medical literature to support their decisions. In other hands, AI algorithm can help provide a quick and efficient disease diagnosis. The existing studies show that AI can successfully prevent some disease as well. They show the efficiency in predicting some disease such as cancer, diabetes, and then reduction of death cases. So some of the ethical challenge that has been discovered by using AI. For example, unemployment. For example, there are two swords. Is the perfect analog to decide when it comes up to the AI. The literature divide into two arguments when it comes to unemployed as result of AI. The AI may be expected to create more job opportunities. It can help some professionals as well. Inequalities. Despite the country benefit in current AI health power, suffer from inequality as well. Maybe the next one is trust. Many people may not feel comfortable with machine making potentially life and death decision about their health care. Bias result. Oh, well, no. In fact, the data may not be representative of the whole population in their multi-difference and diversity as well. It might interpret mis in some of the case in medical study representing the actual medical data as well. The last one is unreliable information. The medical search term majority, some might not be in scholar. The help of officials write protest that online information is not always reliable. The risk is that consuming such information lead to wrong decision and treatment as well. So thank you very much. This is the end of the slide.
Thank you very much, Dr. Orapin, for your presentations. I think the point that comes to my attention is the use of AI, artificial intelligence, which is, I think it will bring attention from our audience because, well, during your presentation, I took a look at the Q&A, the question. I think some of the questions well touch upon the use of the AI. Well, I think we'll take a look at that. Maybe well, not just Dr. Orapin, and also other panelists can jump in and answer the questions. Let's go to our last but not least, Mr. Gil Gonzalez for your presentation. Please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to note that a great deal of our participants today are from the academe and business and other important disciplines. You are important because you are the ones who teach and mentor. And on the other side, those who hunger for mentoring on a very important topic on ethics. Essentially, I would like to think that all of us today are advocates of ethics. And that's why this conference is of real interest, which I'm very pleased. Ethics, as we know, is considered as the more politically correct or more business-friendly term as compared to morals, which is basically the same thing. They refer to principles or standards, norms, systems that can help us distinguish between what is wrong and what is right. As business practitioners and teachers, you are also familiar with corporate governance, which came as a response to the Asian financial crisis in 1997. It started with anchoring the program on the acronym FAT, or FAT, which comes out fairness, accountability, and transparency. But still, scandals persisted. We had the 2007 and 2009 global financial crisis, where more regulations came out to have tighter control over financial and banking institutions. At the heart of all this crisis, whether financial, political, or socio-cultural, either in the past or in the future, is the absence of ethics. And we need not belabor the cost, the damage, moral hazard that they had caused to lives and livelihoods since time immemorial up to the present. And yes, we have to be aware that crisis lurks and are in the making as we speak. Later on, the FAT umbrella was expanded to ESG, which means environment, social, and governance. Then further on, other principles such as inclusiveness and, of course, sustainability have been added for good reasons. Hence, the SDG, or Sustainable Development Goals, came into being. Specific to corporate governance, it is actually another way of saying anti-corruption in order to have a more positive tone. But regardless of tone and packaging, to be unethical is to conduct your business against all virtues that translate to unfairness, greed, non-transparency, irresponsibility, and all the vices you can think of that end up harming your customers, your employees, your investors, if not your society and your very person. I look at it similar to a sinkhole or a quicksand that brings down your business despite short-term gains. If companies and conglomerates fail, governments and nations are no exception. As they say, you can run away from ethics with the mantra, do not be caught, or in Tagalog, huwag kang pahuhuli, or catch me if you can, as the movie title goes. For some reason, corruption always finds a way to be a few steps ahead of regulation. But time and again, it's been proven that you cannot hide, and consequences will come either in this life or the next. This is why I had a bit of struggle adapting to the theme of ethics as growing capability in ASEAN. If it is just one of countless capabilities in ASEAN that we are worried about, then I believe our priorities are misplaced, and we're pretty late in the game. Ethics is at the very core or DNA of any business and corporate life. Over the years, most if not all business vision and mission statements carry the principle of being ethical or its equivalents. But ethics is more than statements. End of the day, it's how companies achieve their goals and objectives. Like a company who once say profits with dignity and honor. But despite all these, how come scandals, scams, fake news persist? Ethics plays out in the whole spectrum of the past, the now, and how it will play out in the future. Similar to corporate governance, it is applied in this time spectrum. You have audit as the review and examination of what we have done in the past. You have compliance, which is what we do now, and risk management, which looks into the future to see what might go wrong and how risk can be mitigated. To this end, how do we effect change? How do we lessen scandals of corruption across economic, political, and socio-cultural spheres? Is it more regulation? Or is it more enforcement of the regulation? How do we balance so that regulation does not curtail the entrepreneurial spirit of business? Still so many questions. The conclusion is we have to accept the fact that we can never completely eradicate corruption, but simply lessen the occasions. But we continue to fight and to be hopeful and manage things in our best lights. In closing, I have 3 short actionable prescriptions. First, ethics has to be in a national agenda to be given life by a genuine public-private partnership platform, which must go hand in hand. Business need to balance, of course, the essence of profits, which is the primary reason for the existence of business, and sustainability on the other hand. Incentives will be nice for those who seriously take on this mission, but the ultimate incentive is the very sustainability of the company. From cradle to success, you need ethics to sustain. At the regional level, how does each country and ASEAN as a whole measure up to the rankings on ethics, whether it's ease of doing business, the ethical index? It's important we support these measures and let's ride on those metrics. What's the risk of AI once they get into the hands of unethical people? What's the Trump presidency in the United States? How will it affect the world? For someone who proposes a much lesser government and regulation, which I see as a policy of trust, wherein you assume everyone is a saint. Of course, it has its advantages and its risks, of course. I came across a very interesting study here in the Philippines by EON, a Philippine consultancy and advocacy group, who measures the trust landscape of the Philippines every year. The title of the study is Turmoil, Truth, and Trust. So we have to ask that question ourselves and every country in ASEAN, what is the ethical temperature across all sectors, political, social, cultural, and economics? Good governance equals good economy, good politics, and good socio-cultural. We know how it goes. The further you are from the truth of having integrity, the further you are from earning trust. So what business survival, viability, and sustainability are we talking about without business trust and confidence? Second, we need more champions to engage in these platforms across all sectors. We need to increase the voice, the intensity and urgency of the voice. For HR, for example, is your hiring ethics-based? I remember one time Citibank once conduct whole-day dialogue sessions with applicants just to find out where the person is coming from in terms of values and ethics. At the ASEAN level, we do need to initiate another AEC, which is known as the ASEAN Economic Community. Now we should propose an ASEAN Ethical Community. And we need you, the academe, students, practitioners of whatever discipline, to collaborate and engage. So we need to support ADO and synergize with other related organizations championing ethics in business or your specific field. ASEAN BAC, where I used to serve as executive director, and where I now support the Philippine chapter for its chairmanship of ASEAN in 2026, we are in the responsible and inclusive business framework. ASEAN BAC has a bias for MSMEs, the micro, small, and medium scale enterprises. And it's a huge field to cover. Every year, we do give awards to recognize those who have taken the risks in ASEAN and have succeeded, and they serve as models that ASEAN makes a lot of business sense. But I do believe we need to rethink this advocacy when you talk of ethics. We'd like to see whether some incentives can be given for those MSMEs who truly promote ethical standards, and in the process, allow them to have access to what we call the 3 M's: mentoring, money, and market. Our Malaysia chapter, who will chair ASEAN next year, is pushing for the creation of ASEAN business entity, which should enjoy incentives in the movement of talent, resources, and investments across the region for those who will qualify. We should strive to ensure that a main criteria in its selection process and its certification process is the emphasis on ethical norms. I'm therefore looking at turmoil, truth, and trust as a possible theme for our 2026 ASEAN chairmanship. But that's just me. Because I think if there's any country in ASEAN who should and can push this, I believe it's the Philippines. Is it because we're a model and therefore credible? I think it's because it's something we direly need, and we're passionate about it. Lastly, the third prescription is corporate governance will work if it translates to personal good governance. There must be solid alignment between the two, since corporate governance and ethics should end up as a way of life in each and every one of us. As they say, we need to walk the talk. My concluding plea to everyone: be the light, be the champion of ethics within your family, in your professional circle, civil society, and ASEAN as a whole. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gill, for your presentation. Well, I see in the Q&A a lot of questions. If I count correctly, 14. So I guess we, in order to please our audience demands for, I think we better go for, I talked to Kun Saluta, and I think we better go for questions. And if we have some time left, we can do the next round for probably for concluding remarks from each panelist. Kun Saluta, well, and the team collect and also sort out the question. Well, the majority to Dr. Bob, okay, but some for Dr. Oropin, but I guess Dr. Oropin has a urgent meeting, so not sure if she could come back. That's okay. Why don't we start with the first question? How can ASEAN's countries balance the application of rule-based ethics with emerging ethics in addressing rapidly evolving challenges such as artificial intelligence and environmental sustainability? I think this is for Dr. Bob.
Well, thank you for the question. And that's why I wanted to give this sort of model of the 5 types of ethics, because you've understood very well in your question that we're talking about 2 different types of ethics. And so the question then becomes, it makes dialogue easier if you say, well, are we talking about emergent ethics, or are we talking about rules-based ethics? or are we talking about one of the other forms? So the question then becomes, rules-based ethics cannot cover all aspects of the human experience, right? That's why we don't have laws for everything. And one of the dangers, as I'm sure my friend Gil would point out, is that if you burden, let's say, companies with too many laws and regulations and things to fill in and et cetera, you lose freedom. So the question, you do need ethics. You need some way of actually defining what is the right thing to do, what is good and bad, and then what should we do about it? Coming to the emerging ethics, the ones you mentioned, I think particularly on sustainability, you've seen these different COPs. The United Nations organizes the Convention of the Parties. COP26 was about global warming. COP16 was about biodiversity. And the idea is to take these emerging issues, which the United Nations does, and to try to sort out what the countries would agree to, and particularly in the case of sustainability, to either have sanctions if companies or countries do not follow the agreements on sustainability, or incentives for those that can preserve sustainability. But coming back to a quick answer to your question, the idea here is that we recognize that there are two different types of ethics. We try to differentiate what we're talking about, and then we decide, and this is where I'm talking about ASEAN as a capability, we decide how we're actually going to run this through the process. So rather than having a big meeting in which we try to assume that everybody will eventually decide on one course of action, we need to have much more effective ways of deciding what we're going to be doing. I do believe that ASEAN is in the center of global warming. You've probably, all of you have read that this region, that Southeast Asia, is the one that is most affected. And if any of you are living on the coast, you can start to see that the coastal waters are affecting things, not to mention the flooding and all the other aspects. So we are right in the eye of the storm, if you will, about taking action about sustainability. Artificial intelligence is another of the areas. We've seen a deep dive in medicine, but you could apply that to business. You could apply it to many other areas, including education. So these are these emerging questions that we have to ask. So the idea is that you have a dialogue. You then don't just stop with the dialogue, but you take action, and you have mechanisms to take action. That's the capability.
Okay. Would you mind if I read another question for you, Dr. Bob?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
The second question, start with the comment first. I think the political condition in some ASEAN countries are very fertile that failure scenario could happen anytime. What are the stakeholders in this matter, and what initiative can be taken to anticipate such failure scenario?
It's a very good question. It's
Yes,
a big question.
A big question too.
Yeah. Basically, in the course of my writing this book and the dialogues, what I have come to learn is that the ASEAN Secretariat and the ASEAN agencies, including AUN or ASEAN Business Advisory Council, are actually organizations that are doing a very good job of moving us towards rules-based ethics. In other words, this cooperation and this common understanding doesn't necessarily, because of the way ASEAN is set up, with the primary ethical principle is sovereignty of nations, but these organizations are gaining more and more in common understanding, common cooperation. And so I believe that in the areas that you're talking about, the ASEAN Secretariat is doing a good job. We just need to be able to start thinking more about applying it. The other comment I will make is that I'm representing a civil society organization. In other words, it's called an association in many areas, NGO. But basically, you have an idea, you want to set up something, and you apply to register. Well, there are many countries. There are several countries in ASEAN where you cannot really set up a CSO. So that ability to actually create a forum of dialogue or a group where people are discussing is also not something that is a guaranteed freedom. So we still have a ways to go. And that's why I wanted to show this sort of scenario, right? That it's not guaranteed that we're going to be successful. Lots of things can happen, as we're seeing in the Middle East. You've probably seen the news this morning about Syria, the wars going on, and we are obviously in the area of geopolitical tensions, which are changing now as well. So I guess my message is that we have to get our act together. We have to start being more capable. We have to be able to have these dialogues, organize the dialogues, and then to start taking action in a more efficient way than what we have been doing.
Thank you very much for your answers. The next one will ask Dr. Masuki. How is artificial intelligence, particularly ChatGPT, is affecting the global ethics? Is this acceptable in the corporate world?
In the corporate world, let me say, Dr. Tanapan, let me start by saying this, that the reason that ethics is so central, to our situation and condition in ASEAN is that there is this disconnect between governments and their people in ASEAN. My sense is that people are demotivated with their institution. The sense of injustice prevails across the region because of inequity, because of restrictive political systems. And therefore, if we are going to have an ethical society, it will have to start at the top with government. And the only way to assure that governments stay the course and continue on the right track is if we have people free to express their opinions, to allow pressure to bear on their policies and action. And that is the lead that the corporate world is also looking at. And therefore, if we talk about AI functions not on the basis of logic. It functions on the basis of patterns in society. It provides answers on the basis of a super speeded up process and a mastery of such a large scope of information based on how it goes out from making sense of patterns within society. And if you don't have a free society for AI to work out from, then it is useless. And therefore, the key is to create a demand for ethics. And that means that we need a motivating ethics to allow people and the government to align themselves on the basis of these modern concepts of human rights, good governance, ESG, as Jill was saying. Now, what is now at the state of play? The people will develop ethics on the basis of their human rights. Governments will develop ethics on the basis of this concept of governance. And therefore, we need both if ethics is going to develop and progress in this area. An ethics based on human rights and an ethics based on governance. And the only way to do that is we allow greater freedom, greater space for expression. And the crisis in Thailand recently and in Myanmar currently goes to show exactly the disconnect between the government and the people, but also the disconnect between the older generation and the younger generation. And therefore, I think we are at the as Bob was saying, at the eye of the storm. And this is something that needs to be addressed openly so that we can move on and develop this region into a growth area, a society where probity prevails and ethics drive politics.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers. Now I will jump to questions for Mr. Gil Gonzalez. They asked you 4 questions. Well, okay, that's a lot. Okay, all right. I think I'll start with the yes or no question. Then we'll if we have some time, we can do the how questions. The first one is ethics in a business perspective different in each country in ASEAN?
I suppose, yes. Do you want me to explain a bit, or is this a simple yes or no?
It's simple yes or no, but if you want to have
Yeah.
some nuance to that.
Yeah, of course. There are countries that have in fact institutionalized what others may find as unacceptable. This thing on commissions. Okay. Other countries simply call it as a referral fee. It's standard. Okay. You broker a business, you put a buyer and a seller together, you get 10%. Common knowledge to everybody, it's fine. Others don't have that kind of a institutionalized arrangement. Of course, what happens there is that it can be abused. So there are countries who don't even have a written policy on that one. In fact, they say some projects, it's the reverse. 90% goes to corruption and 10% goes to the project. So you have these varying degrees or intensity of how ethics is played out. So that's a very brief response.
Okay. I think we'll go to the how questions. How important is ethical responsibility in corporate social responsibility or the CSR in the ASEAN context?
Oh, it's very important. In fact, as I mentioned, ethics should be the DNA of every business. So all the more if you're a conglomerate and you have an expanse in terms of resources and investor base. So the moral hazard gets higher as the company gets to be not just a national player, you become a regional player, you become a global player. So how important is ethics? It's an existential issue, meaning to say it could make or break the company. So you can never really assure the company's sustained success if you play around with ethics. So what I'm saying is that there is a natural, impact, whether it's regulatory based, but now market driven. The fastest way to make judgment a company is the market. So that's why there should be a governments can come up with all the regulation it wants, but as I mentioned, corruption is a way of getting advance or a way around it. But what it needs is transparency and allow the market to make decisions on companies, whether they continue to support this company or you just drop it like a hot potato. So, but government has the responsibility to just make sure there's enforcement of existing regulations. But we need we need watchdogs. But we need to know what companies are doing, and the more people are aware, it becomes self-regulated in a way. So let's allow the market to make the decisions on the fate of companies who play around with ethics.
Okay. The last questions from these persons from this audience, I think, and this is the interesting one. How can ethics I think the audience might grow, but I think he or she means support the business capabilities of ASEAN countries.
Again, how can business support?
How can ethics support the business capabilities of ASEAN's countries?
Well, of course, so two streams. First is the business itself should conform and commit itself to ethics. Now, beyond the company, it should reach out. It should participate in any business associations, whether you're in the Chamber of Commerce, you're in an ASEAN platform, or anything bigger than that. And you make it as an advocacy to help other companies, more so in your specific business, your supply chain. How do you affect your supply chain to make sure that they conform with ethics? Okay, because I think that's the best and fastest way for companies to help promote ethics, wherein those within their control, which is their supply chain, to make sure that their supply chain conforms to some code of ethics, for example, to start with, and then they actually implement these principles and practices.
Okay, thank you very much. This question for Dr. Bob. Across each social issue that is affecting us, especially in respective local office in the workplace industries, how can we understand and cope up with the trend, gives deeper knowledge and learning? Whoa, it's a big question.
Let me come back to something that I've been doing, which is that this ASEAN Human Development Organization was originally, the idea was that the people that would be responsible for, let's say, this people-to-people society for human development and in the workplace would be the HR managers. Now, if you look at the way HR is structured, it's really not part of the job description to be it's to be ethical in terms of the laws and policy, but it's not to take ethical leadership. And so that is sort of uploaded to the senior management, to the CEO, to the board level, to decide what's the right thing to do, etc. My interest is that on some of the big questions, of course, it's at the board level, but there are everyday ethical issues that we have to solve. You need a high level of capability of these, what I call human development managers, to be able to take ethical decisions or to be able to guide things ethically. Do we promote a leader who we know is non-ethical, for example? That's a question that everybody has raised. How do we deal with, we find out that a business practice is not ethical. Well, who talks about that? Who actually is able to address that to the board? And so it's not only one institution. There's a whole, sometimes you even have chief ethics officers in some companies, but it can be not the function of just one person. So the idea that you will hear is this idea of corporate culture, and probably the ethics in which everybody participates, just like ethics of a family, just like ethics of a nation, is that the people that are working in that company have a culture to do the right thing and to disagree or to speak out when the right thing is not being done. But how do you create the corporate culture? So I think there's you've got the top at the board level. You've got the leaders that can be extremely vocal in certain ethical commitments that the company is making. But you need to have that capability as you go down in the offices, and particularly when it regards people, the people that are managing people have to be able to understand that there are rules and results-based ethics that are needed, and that there's someone there that is providing that function and that is capable ethically to be able to know what to do in a particular situation.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question goes to Dr. Masuki. If ASEANs were to face a regional crisis that pits ethical principles like human rights against geopolitical concerns, how should it prioritize its response while maintaining credibility?
Thank you, Dr. Pan. I think this is a key issue. The crisis in front of us now is, of course, Myanmar, for example. From a human rights perspective, of course, the international community and the regional community expects ASEAN to take the lead in resolving this issue, and it cannot do that because of this principle of non-interference. Now, it has a limit because sooner or later, the world cannot stand aside and to just allow things to take their course in Myanmar endlessly, with the suffering and the victimization of the people. And therefore, although it is perhaps legally unlawful to intervene, it is morally necessary. And therefore, to strike a balance between being directly involved, but at the same time allowing that country to resolve the crisis in its own way. Again, pressure has to be put on the junta there. I mean, this is just to be realistic about the situation there. But the general sense, of course, is that you can't be ethical in some areas of life and not be ethical in other areas. It has to be a general atmosphere of trust, ethical behavior across the region, within countries. And that can only be the case if people have the means of expressing their support, but also their disapproval of policy. And therefore, I think this is something that needs to be addressed in terms of greater openness in ASEAN, creating greater solidarity among ASEAN people across boundaries, and to be able to expose what is happening in a certain situation. And therefore, I think we should go back to ASEAN's commitment to build a people-centered, a people-oriented ASEAN. And that is the challenge as we go forward. To be ethically motivated to do so. And the only way that can be done is if ASEAN would allow greater space for people to be part of the process of building this area, of developing this area, and that means basically democracy. And therefore, just to close on this issue, there has been perhaps a decline in the interest of shaping and developing civil society across ASEAN, and this encompasses recognition of the uniqueness of each individual in ASEAN, recognition of plurality, including recognition of the function and operation of markets, because markets not only distribute goods and services, it also brings forward ideas and intellectual perspectives in the market. And therefore, it is a central organizing principle of civil society. And so these are the issues that need to be addressed openly. And I think ADO is in a good position to identify these dimensions and try to open up a discourse on ethics across the region, so that it catches the attention of ASEAN, and that therefore allows ASEAN also to then open up and allowing discussions, dialogue, discourse about ethics in ASEAN.
Thank you, Dr. Masuki, for your answers. Now let's go to Mr. Gill. There are two questions. I'll start with the more specific one. Since you mentioned about human resource, HR, in which it gives importance on ethics, how can we increase awareness in the workplace industries, given that we have options, both online and physical setting?
Well, we've had many models of how a corporate culture on ethics is built and developed in a company. There are many models. But in all of this, it has to start from the owners, because you always say tone at the top, you know. This cannot be initiatives coming just from HR. No less than your owners and your top management should give the mandate to come up with a workable, well, depending on how big your company, the resources you're able to put in, a practical, either a corporate governance culture, or however you want to call it, to put it in place. So there are many models and steps, very practical. They've been proven, and so on, and conforms very much with our national corporate governance agenda requirement coming from the SEC. So it's just a matter of, but it's that you do need to look at it as a company-wide thing. That brings together no less than your owners and your top managers. It has to start from there, and then there are very easy, practical ways, models that you can use to build it up.
Okay. The next question is quite big one. It's about corruption. How do you view the role of corruption in hindering ethical business practice? Actually, there are two sub-questions. That's the first one. The second one, what steps do you believe should be taken to address its effect, I guess, about the corruption effect on hindering ethical business practice?
Well, if you want immediate impact, I would still say that you have the means where in transparency can be put up, you know, to highlight companies who are misbehaving. So who are these? You need to identify the players. So there are what we call the reputational agents. Who are reputational agents of different sectors? You have lawyers, you have auditors and accountants, and they belong to prominent associations, both at national and even ASEAN. They are there. They're very active. Now the only question is, have they done enough? Of course, the problem with these accountants and so on, you say something about your company, then you're putting your career online, huh? The whistleblowers and all of these things. So it's a very challenging, understandably very challenging. But, you know, ethics is really something beyond us. Now, how do you able to push these associations at national and even bring them at regional levels to cooperate and find ways and means, whether they're able to acknowledge and recognize those who champion ethics. So we're not just saying those companies who are misbehaving. We also need to acknowledge those who are giving it all to promote ethics. Okay, the recognition is also very important. And then those who fail their social media. I think that's where your social media needs to. But okay, who are the credible institutions who can say some? Of course, that's number one is government. Number two are the different sectoral representatives, both public and private, to do, you know, to aggressively look into the issues on ethics. Now the others, they do a scorecard. I guess rather than, okay, how do you police yourself? That's essentially, how does a sector police, or self-regulation is very important. How do you strengthen self-regulation? That's where I guess you have the more positive influence on your sector rather than, okay, being very negative. Have a scorecard to acknowledge those who perform and those who are lackluster, and also give recognition. And if you want to give rewards, that's fine. But have a scorecard where everybody gets to participate. Okay, okay, it's ideal, and of course, not everybody will conform. There will be leakages here and there, but that's natural and human nature, that there will be bad apples and so on. But slowly, we never, slack on the fight. So I guess that's how.
Okay, thank you very much. And since the staff told me that we have 5 more minutes for the Q&A, I saved the last question. This is for everyone. It's for every panelist. Can we have some guidelines for ethical attributes that may be incorporated into the learning outcomes? Dr. Bob, would you like to go first?
Into the learning outcomes of what institution? Are we talking about education, or are we talking about what kind of learning context?
Well, the audience didn't identify any institution, but I think
Right.
I think maybe educational institution, and it's my guess.
Okay. I'll come to educational institutions in a minute. So basically, where does ethics come from? As we've all grown up, it starts with the family, what your family is saying, what's the right thing to do. And then you go to school, and there's an ethics there. And then if you have a religion and you go to religion, there was a lot of instruction and guidelines on what's the right thing to do, how to lead your life, etc. When you get to the adult stage, and this is where we're talking about, let's say in education, the university, and the workplace, but I mean, universities are famous for creating political movements. I'm an old man. I can remember back in the 1960s when there was a sort of universal student revolt against the war, the American war in Vietnam. I was in America. There was a revolt against the invasion of Poland, and there was, and then there was rock and roll as well, right? So there was a whole ethical scene that was one of revolt. So we cannot discount social movements, and we've seen a number of them in ASEAN, particularly fomented by students. So let me focus on the role of the university. Is that I do believe that universities have a role in the learning of ethics. And that's why I was very happy to learn at the beginning of this whole adventure that there are more and more ethics courses, that these ethics courses are distributed around in many, many fields, and science, and business, and all of them. And so I think the university does have a role of not providing a sort of one-size-fits-all set of guidelines, but of improving the thought. The word that we use in education is critical thinking. And so this idea that you can have disagreement is very important in ASEAN. Because of the diversity of ASEAN, we have different religions, we have different countries, we have different political systems, and yet we are able to agree and to respect those people who are different from us. So I think there's a lot of potential to continue. And I would say that's why in the book I was focusing on the next generation. You, in your role at the ASEAN University Network, have a very important role. I would say we talked about the center of the storm, or the eye of the storm. It's not a storm in the university, but it is a policy in the university to be able to have these forums, these courses, and to allow people, as Dr. Marzuki was saying, to speak up, right? I think being able to speak up, feeling confident that you can speak up, and that you can actually formulate an opinion and discuss with someone who has a different view is extremely important. So this can take place in companies. It can take place within certain professions as well. Obviously, the legal profession is one, but I think that's really one of the functions of the university as we go forward.
Okay. I guess well, since the question is for every panelist, we may have a couple minutes. Mr. Gill, would you like to answer the question? Should there be guidelines, ethical guidelines incorporated?
Yeah. If you talk of ethical guidelines, there's so many templates already. They're available. You talk of the principles, transparency, accountability, responsibility, everything is there. But what's more important is that who will drive them. Now, since the ethics issue is so huge, everyone in the big picture, all the players there will have to assume a role. Meaning to say, at the corporate level, at the company level, you should have what I call a ethical culture program. Very clear. Now, on top of that, you just look at the layers of your organization, from the board level, from the president level, your top management, down to your three important sectors, the accountants, the HR, and your lawyers. Okay. If you can zero in on these three important functional capacities, you have to make sure that they're involved in some advocacy on ethics. For me, on the national, even on the national, there's been various models. The Philippines, there was a private sector initiative on integrity initiative, very big. Private sector, all the top guns. But they kind of push it really to the halt of down to certification. They will check your company's books, whether in fact you're conforming with your agreed commitments and so on. And then it kind of faded away. Some governments do a ethics renewal program, which is fine. Let them do it. So everybody has a stake. Everybody will have to do something. So that's just my. But of course, if you want to be smart about it, the three sectors for business: your lawyers, your accountants, your HR.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Masuki, well, should we have the ethical guidelines that incorporated in the learning outcome?
Well, I think we should cautious being too paternalistic about things, as if the people didn't matter. My sense is that morality, ethical behavior come naturally to the people. They know what is right, what is wrong, but they look at governments, and as long as governments do not behave, the corporate sector will adjust itself to that. I'm sorry to say, So let's start with the current situation across ASEAN in terms of the room, the space to speak up, because that is the key element to getting things focused, any wrongdoing. And we have three categories: democracies, governments, secondly, governments that are responsive, and governments that are tutelary. These are the three types of governments in ASEAN. Now, as long as we have this situation, there will be progress. Certainly, there is progress, but the laggards, if you will hold back the progress because the situation is such that, for example, within the ministry, a ministry that is known for a lot of wrongdoing will find their staff who are honest, who are straight, who are clean, as as threats to the conditions within that ministry. Yeah, and therefore it's important to be able to have whistleblowers, yeah? To have movement, as Bob was saying. This is an issue. Ethics is too important to be to leave to the ethicists or to the experts. It has to be a joint experience within the community in terms of developing ethical behavior across society. Universities have their role, and in fact, a partnership between universities, scholars, and activists is the way things are changing, or change is brought to the societies across the region. And therefore, let's start with the simple thing of allowing societies, people, the youth, to be able to speak up without feeling that there are repercussions, after speaking up. And therefore, what could be of great service to ASEAN is to continue on this track and to position ethics as a central issue within ASEAN, alongside other capabilities, if you will, But I think it is now time to move on this with really vigor and openness and consistency, so that the whole notion of ethics is not something that is an exception to the rule, but is the rule across the region.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Masuki. I guess we run out of time. So, well, unfortunately, for question for Dr. Orapin, we'll keep it and give it to Dr. Orapin. Maybe later we can, if she can answer that, we can distribute to other outlets. Finally, I will conclude in less than 1 minute that I think, well, ethics involve everyone. It's not just particular agencies to take the sole responsibility. It's everyone involved with public agencies, private agencies, universities for sure, social agencies, movements. So it's kind of like building up a project that, well, even though we see challenges ahead, we got to be optimistic about the process. And well, I guess this is the good opportunity that we have the space to talk. One thing is that ethics has to be hand in hand with freedom of expressions, and this is the examples. So once again, I would like to thank our panelists, Dr. Bob Aubrey, Dr. Masuki Darusman, Mr. Gil Gonzalez, and Dr. Orapin Lausis for participating in our discussion today, our dialogue today. I'll hand over to Kun Saluta. Oh,
just let me say thank you to you, Dr. Tanapan, and to the AUN for hosting this this webinar, for all the work that you've done to lead us to this to the place where we have a book, and we've had a number of webinars. Thank you very much. Nobody told you you have to do this. This has been your initiative, so I'm very, very appreciative of it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Kun Saluta.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all the panelists and also our moderator for taking the time out of this busy schedule. And once again, thank you to all participants that joining us today and stay with us until the end. I really hope that this webinar has provided value insight into the ethical challenges and opportunity in ASEAN. From the look of participants, honestly, it's over like 260 participants participating. And also numerous questions from the floor. As mentioned before, we will make sure that all your questions will be answered by a speaker via the email later on. And also, once again, allow me to share our book, The Ethics of ASEAN. It's available online through provided link in the chat box. And also, please feel free to scan the QR code here. And for this webinar, of course, we will have the recording uploaded to the AUN Secretariat Office YouTube channel. And also, like previous webinar, is also available via the Facebook and also YouTube channel as well. So you can rewatch them again. And before leaving, please also assist us by filling out the survey form to help us improve for the next event. And participants who fill out the form will receive a certificate for their participation in due course. And thank you once again for your kind participation and attention. And we hope that you have a great day ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Kap.
you.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you very much.